True Story intrigued me. I wanted to see it. It never came to theaters, at least in my town. And so eventually I had to wait for it to come out on DVD, and I finally saw it last night, and it was good. So True Story is based off of actual events starring Jonah Hill and James Franco. Jonah Hill plays this reporter for the New York Times, but unfortunately Jonah Hill has skewed the facts of his latest entry to the New York Times, and because he skewed the facts to this new article, he is fired. As he stays at home and tries to find new leads and new places where he could become a reporter, he eventually learns of an accused killer who used his name. Curious, he goes to meet this alleged killer played by James Franco to try to find out why this killer used his name and this killer's true story. And so this strange friendship is bond between these two people, and it becomes a question whether this killer really is a killer or not. Meanwhile, Jonah Hill is using this story to hopefully publish a book. Now, after seeing this movie, I'm not surprised that it doesn't have too many favorable reviews. This is one of those movies that's going to resonate to some people, but to others, they're going to think it's really boring and complete crap. So I can understand the disappointment to some people and some people not liking this film, but overall, I did enjoy this film. I think one of the best things about the film is easily the performances. Jonah Hill, James Franco, and Felicity Jones all do a really great performance in True Story. I wouldn't say their performances are Oscar-worthy or deserve such attention like that, but I think some people could look at those performances and think they're boring because they are very, very subtle. I think James Franco and Jonah Hill show a lot of restraint in their acting for this movie, and they don't go too dramatic or too overpowered. It feels like real people rather than actors. And that's something I really liked about the performances in True Story. It felt like this was a true life movie. It felt like this could have been like a documentary or something, because there's something about this movie that feels genuine and feels real. Which makes sense because this is a movie based off of true events. But you know, when movies are based off of true events, sometimes things are made up and things are added to the movie that really aren't true or skewed differently to make it more of a movie. I don't know if True Story did that, but if it did, it's hardly noticeable. And I think that's the double-edged sword of True Story, because even though it makes it more realistic and feel more like real life, it's definitely not going to be dramatic enough for some people, and some people are going to go into it thinking, okay, I wanted to see a movie, I don't want to see something this true to life. And I think that goes with the performances as well, because there's something about them that is so subtle that it feels like this isn't movie characters, and some people will be bummed out by that. Some people are going to think the performances are boring and dull because it does ride the line between being really true and feeling like a genuine character and being boring and dull. This is also one of those movies that's really hard to categorize because it's a bit of a character piece, because it's mainly about these two characters, their relationships they end up having as they're conversing with each other, and this strange sort of chess match that they have going against each other. It's definitely a crime drama because it is dramatic, even though it's very subtle in its drama. And it is dealing with a crime, and it's not a mystery, but it is a bit of a mystery of whether he did it or not, but it's more of the audience thinking, okay, rather than the movie forcing, did he do it or did he not? And some people are calling it a very slow-burning thriller, which it kind of is, but it doesn't really feel like a thriller enough to even consider it a slow-burning thriller. It's definitely a slow-burning movie. It's definitely something building up, but it's one of those movies that it's really hard to describe what kind of movie it is. Even though all three of the performances that I mentioned were really great in this movie, I think James Franco is the best of the three. James Franco could have been all-out creepy in this movie because he's accused of killing his wife, his daughter, and 2 sons. Hell, they find the family in 2 different rivers with the daughter being in a suitcase. But James Franco shows a lot of restraint in his performance because he doesn't go all-out creepy. Now, there's something eerie about his character because he's one of those people that seems very calm, very collective, seems like a pretty normal, average guy. And this trait helps us to believe, well, maybe he might not be the killer, but at the same time also makes us believe, well, maybe he is, because he doesn't seem to be really emotionally distraught about his whole family dying. And so his performance allows the audience themselves to figure out, okay, should I be on his side? Do I think he's a killer? Do I think he's actually good? It's all up to the audience rather than the movie trying to force these thoughts into you. There's also a few moments where the cinematography is beautifully crafted, very gorgeous, very cinematic, very stylized. And unfortunately, it's only a small portion of this movie that has such artistic scenes. One of which is the opening, where we see a slow motion shot of a teddy bear falling into a suitcase, and as it gets further and further away from the camera, we get to see what else is in the suitcase, and we see the dead daughter in the suitcase. It's a really nice shot and gets us in the mood of what kind of movie we're going to be watching. Now, I know someone else that watched this and he felt like nothing was really happening in the movie. He felt like that he was waiting for something to happen and it just doesn't seem to happen. Now, I can understand that. There isn't a lot of action, there isn't a lot of things going on. A lot of the things going on is under the surface and within these characters that have very subtle performances, so it's really hard to tell what they're going through unless you really pay attention. But it eventually does build up to a court sequence, and it's more along the lines of what we feel about these characters rather than what these characters are going through. Very odd type of movie, but it really worked for me. In the end, I'm going to give True Story 3.5 stars. It could have been better. There is a few moments where I can understand it gets dull and a little boring, and there was a few scenes here and there that I did feel that way, but overall I did really like the film. So have you seen True Story? What did you think about it? Go ahead and comment. If you haven't seen True Story, what is your favorite crime-based drama based off of a true story? I might be jumping the gun because I can't really think of too many off the top of my head, but mine might be Zodiac. And as always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.